And he was
Ready?
right. So you have this present.
Yeah, it'll keep you on your toes if nothing else.
Well, it didn't hit me.
The original. Okay.
You did?
Yeah.
It's-
Oh, wow.
Page.
it was
I just-
Is that sure?
Yeah, you did.
Is that the shirt?
He was.
Okay. Yeah.
Good evening. It is December 20th. Welcome to the Oregon City Council regular meeting. I call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll of council for attendance?
Mr. Davish,
Here.
Mr. Drake,
Here.
Mr. Horniak,
Here.
Mrs. Powell. Here. Mr. Reeves,
Here.
Mr. Wallenczak.
Here.
Mr. Zale.
Here. And also present at tonight's meeting is Mayor Michael J. Safarian, City Administrator Michael Beasley, our Clerk of Council Tina Evans, Law Director Melissa Pura, Public Service Director Paul Roman, our Finance Director Darlene Huntermark, and Chief of Police Brandon Began. Council, first order of business tonight will be to approval of the meeting minutes for November 22nd, 2021 and December 6th, 2021. Can I get a motion for approval?
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves,
I move to approve the minutes from November 22nd, 2021, the regular council meeting, and the December 6th, 2021 special council meeting.
thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Horniak. Any objections, council? Hearing no objections, the meeting minutes for November 22nd and December 6th will be considered approved. Council, we also need to add an item to tonight's agenda. That would be item 159. Can I get a motion to add this item to tonight's agenda?
Mr. President,
Is that Mr. Reeves?
I move to add item 159 to tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Horniak. Moving on to item 159, this is presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and City Administrator Michael J. Beasley. Mr. Beasley?
Mr. President and members, obviously, you've heard enough from me on this. This is our city budget. And again, it's a plan to spend and an estimate as to what we'll receive. We come in with the transparency to know that it's always a work in progress. We make changes during the year. We think it is responsible in light of the conditions we have. We think the finance department's doing a really good job keeping track of the dollars. We're going to keep a strong eye on our revenues during the year and see if we can be ready to, we've got some things that are, some important things that we've kind of postponed for a little while. Let's see where we are in light of the revenue that we have, but we think it's a responsible budget in light of that. And we look forward to working together with the council throughout the year to make adjustments to it when necessary. So thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll look forward to it.
Council? Okay, Council, I will move item 159 to ordinance 159 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record.
Making appropriations and authorizing interfund transfers on an as-needed basis for necessary expenditures for personal services, other expenditures, and capital improvements programs of the City of Oregon, Ohio for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2022 and ending December 31, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President.
Council?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for passage of ordinance number 159 of 2021 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenczak. Second by Mr. Dabish. Ms. Evans, you take a roll call vote of council?
Mr. Wallenczak?
Yes.
Mr. Dabish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes. Thank you, council. Ordinance 159, 2021 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. That ends all the agenda items that we have for the evening. The next thing I guess we'll move to is the mayor's report.
All right, thank you, Mr. President and Council. You probably received the correspondence. I have a couple retirements to announce, and the first one is from David Halka, and let's see, where's this date? And Dave's announcing his retirement resignation as of December 31st, 2021. And I'd ask council's concurrence in accepting the desires of David Halka to retire and resign as effective December 31st, 2021.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Dabish.
I will concur with the mayor on the retirement of David Halka effective December 31st, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Dabish. Second by Mr. Wallenczak. Any objections? Mr. Mayor, you have your concurrence for the retirement of David Halka.
Thank you. Get on to the next quests of his life. Dave was the employee that had the shortest drive to this building, being that he lives next door. Next, we have another retirement resignation, and that would be from Captain Sean Duncan from Fire Station number 43. And he announced his resignation effective December 16th, 2021. And I'd ask council's concurrence in accepting the desires of Captain Sean Duncan.
Council.
Mr. President,
Small.
I move to concur with the mayor's acceptance of the retirement of Captain Sean Duncan from the fire department.
Thank you, Ms. Spalla. Second by Mr. Wallenczak. Any objections, council? And Mr. Mayor, you have your concurrence on the retirement of Sean Duncan.
I'm sure Captain Duncan does also. And with that, I would conclude my report. Yeah, and I would just say that Mr. Beasley and I have been working on a possible change in our zoning code, and he's going to make a presentation, so I might add a few words when he does that. But for my time right now, I conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
Beasley.
Mr. President, members, just a note, and we've talked about it for a little while. One of the things we're looking to do is to deal with a challenge that Oregon faces, that we think that Oregon has done a great job as a host to some of the heaviest industry in the region, but we think we generally have had our share of that. And we're looking, as we've talked over a number of years, to move to make sure that what the industry that we attract in the future is lesser impact and better neighbors. And we'd be looking to we'll do a couple of things. We're looking to some of our industrially zoned areas that kind of near Cedar Point Industrial Park, along Wynn Road, along Corduroy Road. And we'll be looking next year to create a new zoning category and to look to rezone some of that land to a different category. And I'll just kind of show you a sense of what we're looking at now. What the way our zoning code works now, it's very hard for us to keep somebody from putting heaviest industry in almost any, whether it's even in our light industrial areas or our CIs. So we're looking to create a new section that we're kind of playing with it called advanced manufacturing, and we'll look to bring it in after the first of the year. But we just want to give example of a quarter of a look. If you look on the screen, you get a sense of, we're looking to make sure we have enclosed buildings with the process or assembly going on inside, and that if you look at, this is a good example of the sort of zoning we're going to try and create with this code. The Overland Industrial Park is a good example of it. And they accomplish a couple of things that make it look more attractive than, let's face it, things like, the refineries are important to us and power plants are important to us, but we don't think they belong in the industrial areas that are unused yet. I mean, right along Corduroy and Wynn and those areas. We're looking to kind of have these spaces kind of
this kind of development take up that space between that and the heavy industrial areas. Actually,
Sort of a transition.
yeah, transitional, and serves as a screening as well. And I'll show you on the map a little bit when we pull out of it. You can see there's some of the things they've done with it. They break up the mass of the buildings. You have variegated height. They do banding, both vertical and horizontal. And you can put a large building in and a good number of jobs, but you can see they're not necessarily unattractive. Here's another facility that's across the way that can be more attractive. And so we are in the process of drafting, working on a draft. If members know the process, this would have to be about a 6-step process. We'll have to pass a resolution that will refer the matter to the Plan Commission just to create the new code section. And then the Plan Commission will review it, make their, if they adopt it, then it comes back to council to be codified. All right, that takes a couple of public hearing processes. And I'll show you the land that we'd be looking then to, if I can bring it back out, take me 1 minute here. Let me realign to the axis. The lands that we'd be looking, kind of this space here that's zoned industrial along here, some of this up along here, some of these spaces, this land that is owned here along here, zoned industrial. We would look to take those properties and zone them in that category, is what we would look to do with that. Maybe even, there's one other parcel in the southern end of town, close to the Bay Park Hospital, that's industrially zoned land that the city doesn't control, but we'd look at that as well. What we want to do is work to ensure that the industries that Oregon attracts in the future are good neighbors and work well with us. So this will be it's not something that'll happen within a few months, but it's something that we're going to start. We want to start the ball with a resolution that we bring in here in January sometime, just to begin the process by referring it to the Plan Commission. And again, if you look at the industrially zoned areas along this space generally is what we'd be looking to accomplish that with. All right, just want to give that heads up that that's something that we're working on, something that we've been engaged in for a while. The last one is, if you go back, obviously you can just get a feel of the building. It looks different than a power plant or a refinery, and that's something we're looking to accomplish. So as you look at it, only thing we're going to do is create a code section for it first, and that'll take a few months in and of itself, but we'll begin that process after the first of the year.
And with that, also, right now we have M1 and M2, and we call M1 light industrial, M2 heavy industrial. But in really essence, the M1 is inside industrial and the M2 is outside industrial. So we might want to more
clean those up as
accurately
well.
change the verbiage of that to more address what those two zonings actually are.
And Mr. Chair, the other thing along that theme, the places that we're likeliest to leave the allowance for heavy industrial is kind of spaces over maybe off of York or west and north, closer under the refinery, and those spaces where we'd look to leave room for other heavier industrial over in those spaces. Some of those locations over there, but the places that are further kind of between our residential and commercial areas and our heaviest industries, we're looking to create this new category. We don't really have a tool in Oregon to restrict that use. Unless we act on something like this, somebody could put in any of those industrial areas and put something that we might not find as attractive. So this is the kind of the tool we're looking to get. So we have that kind of tool, see if we can get it from there. We just want to let the members know that that's something that I'm expecting to wrap it up between now and the first week of the year, and then we'll bring it in and refer to the Plan Commission as the first step we take. They go through a hearing process, a public hearing process, then it comes back to here. We go through a hearing process, it gets passed.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley.
All right.
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
if I may, Mike, just a follow-up question on that, just to make sure I'm kind of understanding the scope of what you're looking to do. So you're going to, I'll say, clean up or redefine the M1, M2 classifications and add a third classification.
That's correct.
That would be I'll say somewhat restrictive or set specifications for the exterior, doesn't necessarily dictate what is inside the building, just what the facade of the building would look like
That's correct.
from the outside appearance.
Among the things that it would do that are currently regulated very much or lesser to a lesser extent are industrial areas, setbacks, landscape screenings, the type of fencing, the type of, even parking lot restrictions are pretty common. And if you look around, I went and drove around from Southeast Michigan and along 75 and looked at different places. Some of the most attractive are the newer things like at the Overland Industrial Park area. There's some other attractive ones out in the Arrowhead area. We think that we know what we want to have less of here. And unless we put some rules in, we don't have much ability to say no to those things. All right. And so with this sort of tool, we think we can welcome the sort of industry that I think would fit well here, be good neighbors for us and good employers for us going forward. The other, so breaking up the mass of the buildings, variation of the height, landscape buffers, fencing, setbacks are all components to it. Maybe an architectural review committee process on the facade and things like that.
$50.
Pardon?
$50.
Yeah.
Phone goes off.
We'll see.
So in reclassifying the M1, M2, that's already in existence, so we would in essence rewrite those zoning categories. Would we be including the language to adopt those types of requirements into the M1, M2 in addition to the new
No,
ones?
the M1 and M2, we're thinking we want to have fewer places that M1 and M2 are permitted.
Okay.
We would end up taking the lands that are kind of around the perimeter of our industrial areas and moving those to, obviously, anyone can apply for a zone change whenever they want for land they have, but the lands that, whether the foundation has or the city has, we've been looking to try and take almost all of that land and making it in this category. But in these areas that are already they're already currently zoned industrially, some M1s, we actually have 3 areas where industrial has. We have a heavy light and a CI. None of them provide for the sort of protections that we think we would like.
Okay.
And so and I think in some ways, we think even our light industrial creates a false impression. You can have pretty heavy industry out there. It's just got to happen inside. So we think a thing that it kind of ensures that it be more attractive and fit in better would be good in those areas that we showed you. Again, looking at our map, these spaces in here, kind of in this corridor around here, that are already zoned industrial primarily, we would look to have this be a new category. So we have better capacity to, we think, look for the community's interest long-term.
And one thing to bear in mind, like Mr. Beasley said, our property that we actually titled in the city or the foundation, we can apply for that without having somebody resist us to apply. We cannot force other people that have already M2 or M1 into taking the zoning. We can only appeal to them.
Mhm.
And we could say, we could make a pretty good appeal, say that we believe that if we rezone this, we could more likely attract something to your spot versus the zoning you have with resistance.
Understand. So once the new classification is created, so let's just say for argument's sake, it's M3. Then the existing M1, M2 that are the desirable location to make that change then would be another
It's a
proposal.
separate resolution we bring into city council saying, we do legal descriptions of the parcels and say, these parcels, we want to reclassify in this new zoning category. The only ones we do that for would be things that we currently have. Right now, you have 3, M1, M2, and CI. We would take any of those that we have that are on that perimeter and seek to load them, put them in this new category.
Does that present a barrier or any challenge to if you needed to cobble together multiple parcels to create larger acreage? If you have this classified in the new, how does?
It doesn't change that hurdle at all in any particular way. It does for us, if if we, depending on what you do, most of the time, if we're looking to get something done, you want to have the zoning done for it ahead of time in any event. But for this, we really think that it's important to the community and what we think the kind of industry we want to attract to take this step. We have very limited ability to restrict something that would be less attractive unless we take a step like this.
Makes sense. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Beasley, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Mr. Pepora.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Pepora. Mr. Roman. No report. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Walmzak.
The members of council and administration for presenting the overview of the budget over the last 3 weeks. Look forward to working with the administration over the next year to kind of carve out and see what we can do to improve the city of Oregon. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Walmzak. Mr. Drake.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Mr. Reeves.
I have nothing from my standing committee. Excuse me, but I would like to wish our citizens a very happy and safe holiday season.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Horniak.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report from my standing committee. To echo Mr. Reeves, I'd also like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, everybody in council, all of our community members. And one kudos to, I know Kathy's worked hard on this with the administration. Certainly we had some support. The Christmas tree light representation in the city of Oregon is nothing less than just breathtaking. You can't be said enough. The amount of people that have gotten into it and put up lights and had some fun with it, whether they were competing for the contest or they just felt, hey, the neighbors are doing it, so I got to throw a little something out too. It is an absolute ball to drive around and look at the number of people that are really, I'll say, kind of bringing that spirit into the community. And I know we have announced our winners, but I would say that the real winners are everybody in the community is getting to enjoy what that is. So I'd like to thank all those that worked on that, got involved in that, helped drive that, because it really is a great show of community support to see that going on in our neighborhoods. So, and with that, I end my report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Ms. Pauloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing from my standing committee, but thank you for that, Mr. Horniak. Thank you. No, you didn't steal anything. No, the grand prize winner for the home decorating light contest was Grasser, Lights on Grasser. And I should have wrote it down. It is posted at Winter Wonder Lights who the winners were, but there were over 30 houses that were registered, but there was several more, so much more that weren't even registered. And really, kudos goes out to the whole city of Oregon who did decorate. And if you ever go out looking at them, stop by Bayside and see the Santa between the two houses. This Santa is taller than the houses and he's in between. They got him tethered between two houses. So a lot of creativity out there, and it was a really great event. The Winter Wonder Tree was our first contest. I don't have the name of who won it, but thanks to the police department for awarding that. Like I said, all the winners are online and they're at the Winter Wonder Lights Facebook page. And again, Merry Christmas to everyone and Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Mr. Davish.
I got no report. Also, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. And I have no report from my standing committee, but council, we need to set a public hearing for January the 24th, Monday, of course. The application for a zoning change from R1 low density residential district to an A1 agricultural district on a portion of the property described as 6450 Corduroy Road, parcel number 44-38921. The owner applicant is Kelly Clark. Council, can I get a motion?
So moved, Mr. President.
Mr. Horniak, and second by Mr. Davish. Council, any objections? Thank you, council. With that, I will seek, no, excuse me, I'm sorry. We do have someone signed in to speak this evening. Ms. Ackerman, you want to come to the podium? Please state your name and your address.
Beth Ackerman, 931 Bury Road, Oregon, Ohio. I'm excited about what Mr. Beasley was saying in that kind of goes into what I wanted to share. But the map was really interesting that you put up there because I've heard there's a lot of little kind of farmer infighting over who's controlling what up in there. And I hope Mr. Cohn hasn't left us yet, just yet. But that does make me want to ask, so you already have that road figured in on the Jolin property, so the Cone property, there is a forested wetland, and then would you pursue, just be diligent, pursue like a delineation on that piece that you showed on that map?
Anything
Maybe you
that,
did already.
anything that's a wetland, that is a wetland.
Okay.
We have no interest, that would not, we like tree screening. We looking to plant more trees and that fits right in and serving our need
Okay.
for tree screening.
Because the road goes right up to the woods
Sure.
and then, on two sides and.
It's
No, I'm
carefully,
just-
we don't touch, none of the trees are touched with the road.
All right, well, but that's why I just wanted to address this evening is like, I know all we do is like, I get up here and I complain and and it just put up a fight. But what I was hoping is that as we go into 2022, we can turn a corner and we can take Oregon into, let's get out of the dark ages when it comes to wetlands and the environment, and let's improve the reputation that we have, like in the birding community and outside of this area, because people just see us as industrial. Like, that's it. That's all we are. We're the Gary, Indiana. You drive through and it's, oh, that's how you have to endure it till you get out, past. And I know, industry is necessary and everything, but I do a lot of research, and there are a lot of cities across the country. And I guess reading the charter and getting to know the charter and getting to learn when all the ordinances are enacted and all that. And I gotta say, we are very archaic in where we are on the environment in our charter, in our ordinances, and how we approach decision-making for the city. And if anybody's interested, I have found like there's a city out in Oregon, and Oregon, the state of Oregon, and it's called Veneta. But I can get copies of it, or you can look it up yourself. But they're changing. This was just enacted in July of this year, but their ordinances and on establish a process and standards which will minimize the degradation and destruction of significant wetlands within the city limits and conserve. These are things you guys say you're doing. These are things we want you to do. These are things that I think will make us appeal to more people if we look like we're environmentally conscientious and we're working towards sustainability and all that. And so I'm just excited about, hopefully, I know, yes, I get excited a lot. Somebody wants to slide that in. But anyway, I want to work together. I don't want to fight. I don't want you guys to dread, oh my God, here she goes again or whatever. I want to find where we can work together and with the community, not necessarily me, but where we look like we're moving forward in a responsible manner with responsible land use and with protection of the environment. Because honestly, I have gotten an earful from the birding community about how difficult our city is and how we don't have a focus on the environment and how, and I don't want to just go on arguing forever. I want to work together to improve on everything the way, and I believe a lot of you do too. And so if anybody's interested, I can get you more information, but they're passing ordinances across the country that are more about the sustainability and the protection and of the environment. And I just think we could do a lot to improve our reputation.
Thank you, Ms. Ackerman. Your point's well taken.
Okay, thank you. And Merry Christmas.
Mr. Caphammer, please come to the podium, state your name and your address, please.
I didn't see this up here to sign it, so that's why I was like, where's the
okay.
sign-in thing? PJ Cab Member 3646 Navarre Avenue. I live right across from Walmart on Navarre. And I believe that's, maybe the chief can answer that, but Jake brakes are illegal right there. Is that true?
That's true.
Yeah, we have. posted-
Engine brakes are illegal in Oregon.
Yeah. So there's like, I want to be legit here when I say there's probably 400 to 500 Jake brakes a day that go off right there at that light. And it's almost like literally 200-300 yards away. It's not even needed. Because that light's, and I understand why, that light sits there and it's kind of an open stretch and they're coming down into it, but it's nonstop. And I don't even know if we've ever given a ticket for it in the history of Oregon. Because apparently, because these guys the truckers, they talk. If you enforce it, it kind of goes away, but it's literally not, and it shakes the, I mean, I know there's not many houses there, but it's not being enforced at all.
Well, you're not, I know you're not in the only area this happens. I hear it too.
Right,
where I'm at.
and I mean, I've literally watched the police in the parking lot sitting there as they're doing it, and nobody does. It just never gets enforced. So maybe it'd be probably a really good revenue generator for the city for a little bit, but just if they could write just a warning to them or something, because it's nonstop. So, and I don't know, if probably wouldn't take much to get it done, but it's literally every time the light goes off, it's 3 or 4 trucks per light. And the light's not, and it's every minute.
I'm sure Chief Bacon could have a word, but he could look into it if we have done any enforcement on that, or?
Yeah, we are not big enforcers of the engine braking, but that's something we can look into.
Yeah, I'm not asking for tickets either. We're just like pull
No,
them
I
over and say,
Right.
I understand. We can look into it.
some of them are not, I mean, just say shake the whole house. It never stops. So thank you. I just wondered.
Thank you, Mr.
We'll
Callahan.
talk about it and see if we can do something.
Council, any further comments? Can I seek a motion for adjournment? Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Second by Mr. Thank you. Any objections? Meeting is adjourned.